My hands gripped the steering wheel as the blizzard hammered against the windshield. 7 hours down, 2 to go. My fingers ached from holding tight, but I could not stop smiling. Tonight was Diane's 30th birthday, and she thought I was stuck in Denver on business. The red velvet cake sat safely in the back seat, and the silver bracelet burned in my jacket pocket. I kept picturing her face when I walked through the door, how she would cry those happy tears I loved so much. I had no idea that the warmth I was driving toward had already frozen over. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that front door, let me know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. Hit that like button if you have ever gone the extra mile for someone you love, and subscribe because this story gets darker before the light comes back. Trust me, you will want to see how I handled what came next. Now let me take you back to where it all started falling apart. 5 years ago, I met Diane in a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon. I was running late for a meeting, juggling my laptop and a large Americano when I bumped straight into her. The coffee splashed all over her laptop right in the middle of what looked like an important presentation. I felt like the biggest idiot in the world. She stared at the brown liquid dripping onto her keyboard, then looked up at me with these piercing green eyes. Instead of yelling, she just sighed and said, "Well, there goes 3 hours of work." I bought her a new laptop the next day and left my number with the delivery. I also included a note asking if she would let me take her to dinner so I could apologize properly. To my surprise, she called. That dinner turned into breakfast the next morning, and breakfast turned into 5 years of what I thought was the real thing. Diane worked as a marketing manager at a tech firm downtown. She was smart-driven and had this laugh that could light up a room. When she focused on something, the whole world disappeared. I loved that about her. We got married 2 years after that coffee disaster. It was a small ceremony on Cannon Beach, just close family and a handful of friends. The ocean crashed behind us as we said our vows, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest man alive. I had no idea that the warmth I was driving toward had already frozen over. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that front door, let me know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. Hit that like button if you have ever gone the extra mile for someone you love, and subscribe because this story gets darker before the light comes back. Trust me, you will want to see how I handled what came next. Now let me take you back to where it all started falling apart. Diane started working later, coming home after 9 or 10 at night. When she did get home, she would go straight to her phone, scrolling through messages while I tried to talk about my day. I would ask how things were going, and she would give me that flat smile and say, "I am fine, just tired." The words felt rehearsed, like she had practiced saying them without meaning them. I tried harder. I cooked her favorite lasagna, the one with 3 kinds of cheese that took hours to make. I set up candles on the dining table and put on the jazz music she used to love. When she finally got home that night, she looked at the setup, said it smelled great, ate quickly, and went upstairs to bed by 8:30. I sat there alone, staring at the melted candles, wondering what I was doing wrong. She stopped calling me by my nickname. For years, she had called me Free, a shortened version of Freeman that she said fit my personality. But lately, it was just Freeman, flat and formal, like I was a coworker instead of her husband. Our intimacy disappeared too. We used to be close 3 or 4 times a week, spontaneous and full of laughter. Now weeks would pass without even a kiss that lasted more than a second. When I tried to initiate anything, she would turn away and mumble something about being exhausted. I started to wonder if I had become unattractive to her, if maybe I was working too much or not working enough. Every night, I lay in bed next to her, feeling the gap between us grow wider. One evening, I finally asked, "Are we okay?" She looked at me like I had asked the strangest question in the world and said, "Why would we not be?" Then she rolled over and went to sleep. I spent weeks trying to figure out what was wrong. Was it me? Was it stress from her job? Was there something I was missing? I convinced myself that she just needed a reminder of how much I loved her, something big that would break through whatever wall had gone up between us. That is when I came up with the birthday surprise. 6 weeks before her 30th, I started planning. I was working on a project in Denver, Colorado, about a 9-hour drive from Portland. Diane knew I was going to be out of town for her birthday, and I let her believe I could not get away. I hated lying to her, but I told myself it was a good lie, the kind that would make the surprise even better. I called Sweet Haven Bakery in Denver, the one she had raved about when we visited 2 years ago. I ordered her dream cake red velvet with cream cheese frosting and had them write, "Happy 30th, my love," in elegant script across the top. I bought a silver bracelet and had it engraved with "Forever Yours" on the inside. I spent 2 nights writing her a letter by hand, 2 full pages telling her how much the past 5 years had meant to me and promising 50 more just like them. I imagined walking through the door, seeing her face light up, watching her cry those happy tears. I thought this was going to be the turning point, the moment that reminded her why we got married in the first place. The night before I left Denver, I called her. She picked up on the 4th ring. "So you are really not coming home?" she asked. Her voice was flat, almost cold. I felt a stab of guilt, but pushed through. "I am so sorry, babe. This project is critical. I will make it up to you, I promise." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Sure, whatever," and she hung up. I stared at my phone, that sinking feeling in my chest growing heavier, but I shook it off. She was just disappointed. Tomorrow when I showed up, it would all be worth it. I left Denver at 5 in the morning on her birthday. The roads were clear, and I figured I would make it to Portland by 2 in the afternoon, plenty of time to surprise her before dinner. But around 8, the sky turned gray and snow started to fall. Within an hour, it was a full blizzard. The wind screamed against the car and visibility dropped to almost nothing. I slowed from 70 miles per hour to 30, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I could barely see the taillights of the car ahead of me. The highway became a crawl of brake lights and swirling snow. I pulled over twice to rest and drink bad gas station coffee. My hands were stiff from gripping the wheel so hard. Every time I glanced at the back seat, I checked to make sure the cake was still intact. 9 hours later, at 2:15 in the afternoon, I finally pulled into our driveway in Portland. I was exhausted, my back ached, and my eyes burned from staring through the snow. But none of that mattered. I grabbed the cake, the bracelet, the letter, and walked up to the front door. My heart was pounding. I imagined her running into my arms, laughing and crying at the same time. I unlocked the door quietly, wanting to keep the surprise until the last second. I stepped inside, ready to see her face light up. Instead, I heard her voice, and everything shattered. I stood in the hallway, frozen. Diane was in the living room, and I could hear her talking on speakerphone. Her voice was clear, casual, like she was discussing the weather. At first, I thought maybe I should announce myself, but something in her tone made me stop. I stood there holding the cake, my jacket still on snow, melting into the carpet beneath my boots. Then I heard the words that would replay in my head for months. "God, I hope he crashes," Diane said, and she laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a sarcastic one. It was genuine amusement. Her sister Kristen was on the other end, her voice crackling through the speaker. "Or at least a few months of silence," Kristen replied, laughing too. They both laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I felt my stomach drop. The cake suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds in my hands. I wanted to move, to say something, to do anything, but my body would not cooperate. "Seriously, though, when are you going to leave him?" Kristen asked. Her tone shifted more serious now. Diane sighed, and I could picture her sitting on the couch, probably twirling her hair the way she did when she was thinking. "I do not know. It is complicated," Diane said. "He is so clingy, always trying to fix things that are not even broken." My chest tightened. Clingy, that was how she saw me. "Girl, you have been saying this for months," Kristen said. "Just rip the Band-Aid off." I know," Diane replied. The house, the finances. It is easier to stay for now, easier to stay. Not because she loved me, not because she wanted to work on us, because it was convenient. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. The air left my lungs, and I had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. "At least you have got Jake right," Kristen said, her voice teasing now. Diane laughed again, softer this time. "Jake is fun. He does not ask me a million questions, he just gets it." Jake. Who the hell was Jake? My mind raced trying to place the name. I thought about her coworkers, the people she mentioned in passing. Then it clicked. Jake Morrison, senior marketing director at her company. She had mentioned him a few times over the past few months, always in the context of work projects. But now hearing her say his name like that, I understood. This was not just about work. I stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds. My brain was trying to process everything, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Diane continued talking. Anyway, I gotta go. He might call soon to wish me happy birthday from his hotel. Kristen snorted. God, he is so predictable. Diane agreed. Tell me about it. I could not listen anymore. I moved quietly into the kitchen, my legs shaking. I set the cake down on the counter, the plastic container making a soft thud against the granite. I pulled the letter out of my jacket pocket, the one I had spent 2 nights writing. I opened it and read the first line. To my beautiful wife, the love of my life. The words felt like they belonged to someone else now, someone naive and foolish. I placed the letter next to the cake. Then I took the silver bracelet out of my pocket, the one engraved with Forever Yours, and set it on top of the letter. My hands were trembling. I was not crying, I was too shocked to cry. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only an empty shell. I had driven 9 hours through a blizzard for someone who hoped I would crash. I had risked my life to surprise someone who thought I was predictable and clingy. I turned and walked back toward the front door. I opened it slowly, careful not to make any noise. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes just staring at the house. Snow was still falling lightly, now covering the windshield in a thin layer of white. I looked at our home, the place where I thought we were building a life together. It did not feel like home anymore. Maybe it never really was. I started the engine and drove away. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I could not stay there. I ended up at a hotel near the airport. I checked into a single room, threw my bag on the bed, and sat down. My phone was buzzing. I looked at the screen. 6:47 p.m. Diane was calling. I stared at her name flashing on the screen and let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text came through. Free, where are you? Call me. I did not respond. At 7:15, she called again. I turned the phone face down on the nightstand and ignored it. I opened my laptop. I do not know why, but I felt like I needed to see him. I searched for Jake Morrison on LinkedIn. His profile popped up immediately. He was handsome in that polished corporate way. Dark hair, strong jaw, confident smile. His bio said he had been at Diane's company for 8 months. 8 months. I wondered how long this had been going on. I closed the laptop and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. That night, I did not sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, every word she said, every laugh. I thought about the past 5 years, all the moments I thought were real. How long had she felt this way? Was Jake there all along, lurking in the background while I was oblivious? Had I missed other signs? I went through every memory, every interaction, looking for clues I should have seen. By the time the sun came up, I had my answer. It did not matter how long it had been going on. I opened my laptop. I do not know why, but I felt like I needed to see him. I searched for Jake Morrison on LinkedIn. His profile popped up immediately. He was handsome in that polished corporate way. Dark hair, strong jaw, confident smile. His bio said he had been at Diane's company for 8 months. 8 months. I wondered how long this had been going on. I closed the laptop and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. That night, I did not sleep. By the time I got to Seattle, I had 15 missed calls and 27 text messages from her. I read them, but did not reply. Where are you? Why did you leave the cake? What is going on, Freeman? You are scaring me. Each message felt more desperate than the last. But I felt nothing. The man who would have driven through a snowstorm for her was gone. In his place was someone who finally understood what he was worth. The first week I stayed silent. What mattered was that it was over. At 6 in the morning, I checked out of the hotel. I drove back to Seattle, where I worked and where I still kept a small apartment I had rented before we got married. I never sold it, always thinking it might be useful as an investment property. Now I was grateful I had kept it. I did not call Diane. I did not text her. I did not explain anything. She wanted silence. She would get it. My phone was blowing up. He had met Diane a few times over the years, and I got the sense he never really warmed to her. What happened? He asked. I told him everything, the drive through the snowstorm, the overheard conversation, her words about hoping I would crash. Jake. Thomas listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You need evidence for divorce proceedings." "I have her words," I said. "I heard everything." Thomas nodded. "Write it all down. Every single word you remember. Do it now while it is fresh. We will also need to look into financial records, see if there is anything unusual." I went home that night and typed out the entire conversation word for word. I could hear Diane's voice in my head as I wrote that casual cruelty, the way she laughed. When I was done, I saved the document and sent it to Thomas. Over the next few days, I started digging. I went through our bank statements looking for anything out of place. I found several charges for expensive lunches at upscale restaurants, downtown places Diane had claimed were business meetings. I cross-referenced the dates with her calendar and found that many of them fell on days when she said she was working late. I also found receipts for a hotel in Portland charged to her personal credit card. My stomach turned. I sent everything to Thomas. Diane, meanwhile, was losing her mind. I stepped inside, ready to see her face light up. Instead, I heard her voice, and everything shattered. I stood in the hallway, frozen. Diane was in the living room, and I could hear her talking on speakerphone. Her voice was clear, casual, like she was discussing the weather. At first, I thought maybe I should announce myself, but something in her tone made me stop. I stood there holding the cake, my jacket still on snow, melting into the carpet beneath my boots. "My lawyer will contact you." Then I blocked her number. I did not want to hear her excuses or her apologies. I did not want to hear her try to twist the narrative to make herself the victim. I was done. The second week, Thomas sent the divorce papers to Diane. The filing cited emotional abuse and infidelity as grounds for dissolution of marriage. I asked for a 50-50 split of assets and no alimony. I did not want her money. I just wanted out. The papers were delivered to her at work, signed for by the receptionist at her office. Thomas told me she called his office 17 times that day, begging to speak to me. He did not put her through. Diane started emailing me. Long, rambling emails full of apologies and explanations. "I did not mean it," she wrote in one. "Kristen and I were just venting. You know how sisters are. We say things we do not mean." Another email said, "Jake is just a friend. There is nothing going on. You are overreacting." A third one was more desperate. "Please let us talk. I love you. I do not want to lose you." I read each one once and then deleted it, but I was not satisfied with just her words. I wanted the truth. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Angela Ross, who came highly recommended. I gave her everything I had on Jake Morrison and asked her to find out what was really going on. It took her less than a week. She came back with photos, timestamps, credit card receipts. Diane and Jake had been meeting regularly for the past 6 months. Dinners at romantic restaurants, a weekend trip to the coast, late-night drinks at a bar near her office. There was no evidence of a physical affair, no photos of them kissing or holding hands, but it did not matter. The emotional betrayal was just as real. She had built a life with him while pretending to build one with me. I sent everything to Thomas. He added it to the case file. "This is solid," he told me. "She does not have a leg to stand on." I felt a grim satisfaction. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control. During the second week, Diane called me from a number I did not recognize. I picked up without thinking. "Freeman, please," she said, her voice breaking. She was crying. "I love you." It was a stupid joke. I did not mean any of it. I let her talk, let her get it all out. When she finally stopped, I spoke. My voice was calm, cold. "A joke," I said. "You hoped I would crash. You wanted the insurance money. You told Kristen it was easier to stay with me for convenience." "Which part is the joke, Diane?" I was angry, she said, sobbing now. "You are never home. You work all the time." I felt neglected. I almost laughed. "I worked to build our future," I said. "You worked to plan your exit." She tried to argue, but I cut her off. "Neither was what you said. Goodbye, Diane." I hung up and blocked that number too. By the third week, Diane's world was falling apart. Jake Morrison had cut off all contact with her. Apparently, he did not want the drama. Kristen was avoiding her, too guilt-ridden over her role in the conversation. Even Diane's parents, when they found out what had happened, were disappointed in their daughter. My mother told me that Diane had called her crying, begging her to talk to me. "Please tell Freeman I am sorry. I made a terrible mistake," Diane had said. My mother, bless her, had replied, "Diane, you told my son you hoped he would die. There is no coming back from that." Diane tried one last desperate move. She showed up at my office in Seattle, but security would not let her in. She sat in the parking lot for 3 hours waiting for me to come out. I saw her from my office window on the 4th floor. She looked small, sitting in her car, staring up at the building. Part of me felt sorry for her. But that part was not strong enough to make me go down. On the 21st day after I left, Diane sent me one final message. It came through email, since I had blocked her everywhere else. "Freeman, I know I do not deserve forgiveness. But please know I never meant those words. I was scared of how much I needed you. I pushed you away because I did not know how to handle feeling so dependent on someone. Jake was a distraction, nothing more. I see now what I lost. You were the best thing in my life and I destroyed it. I do not ask you to come back. I just ask you to know that I am sorry and I will regret this for the rest of my life." I read the message 3 times. I sat in my apartment, the rain pattering against the window, and tried to feel something. Anger, sadness, even pity. But there was nothing. The love I had for her was gone. She had killed it with her words, and no amount of apologies could bring it back. The divorce was finalized in the 3rd week. We met with our lawyers in a conference room downtown. Diane looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy, her face pale. She cried through the entire meeting, signing the papers with shaking hands. I signed with a steady hand, my signature firm and clear. Thomas asked me quietly, "You okay?" I nodded. "I will be." 3 months after the divorce, I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Helen Morales, and she specialized in trauma and relationship recovery. I sat in her office, a cozy room with soft lighting and comfortable chairs, and told her everything. She listened without judgment. "I still think about her sometimes," I admitted. "Not because I miss her, but because I question everything." "How did I not see it?" Dr. Morales leaned forward. "You saw what you wanted to see," she said gently. "That is not weakness, Freeman. That is hope. You were the best thing in my life and I destroyed it. I do not ask you to come back. I just ask you to know that I am sorry and I will regret this for the rest of my life." I read the message 3 times. I sat in my apartment, the rain pattering against the window, and tried to feel something. Anger, sadness, even pity. But there was nothing. The love I had for her was gone. She had killed it with her words, and no amount of apologies could bring it back. We met for beers, and he greeted me with a huge hug. "Dude, we have not seen you in years," he said. As we talked, I realized how much Diane had isolated me. She had never liked my friends, always finding reasons why we could not hang out with them. Slowly, she had cut me off from my support system. I had not even noticed it happening. Work became my focus. I threw myself into my projects, staying late, taking on extra responsibilities. My boss noticed and offered me a promotion to senior software engineer. I accepted. The new role gave me something to pour my energy into, a way to prove to myself that I was still capable, still valuable. I led a major project that launched successfully, and for the first time in months, I felt proud of something. I also started taking care of myself in ways I had neglected. I joined a gym and went 4 times a week. The physical exertion helped clear my mind. I took up cooking not for anyone else but for myself. I learned to make dishes. I experimented with recipes, and found peace in the ritual of preparing a meal. On weekends, I drove out to the Cascade Mountains and went hiking. The trails were quiet, the air clean, and the views reminded me that there was a whole world out there beyond my pain. Slowly, I began to rediscover who Freeman was before Diane. I remembered that I used to love reading science fiction novels, a hobby I had abandoned because Diane thought it was childish. I started reading again, losing myself in stories of distant galaxies and alternate realities. I remembered that I used to play guitar, another thing I had given up. I bought a used acoustic and spent evenings relearning old songs. Each small step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Through all of this, I learned some hard lessons. The first was that love should not require you to lose yourself. I had spent 5 years trying to be the perfect husband, molding myself into what I thought Diane wanted. But perfect for who? Not for me. I had sacrificed my friends, my hobbies, my identity, and for what someone who saw me as convenient as a safety net while she explored other options. The second lesson was about words and actions. Diane had said, "I love you every day." But that one conversation revealed the truth. When people think you are not listening, that is when they tell you who they really are. I learned to pay attention to actions, not just words. I learned to trust my instincts when something felt off. The third lesson was about self-worth. For so long, I thought Diane's love defined me. I thought that if she did not want me, I must not be worth wanting. But I was wrong. Her rejection was not a reflection of my value, it was a reflection of her inability to appreciate what she had. Walking away was not giving up. It was choosing myself, finally putting my own well-being first. And the final lesson was about letting go of anger. Did I hate Diane? No. I pitied her. She would spend the rest of her life wondering what could have been regretting the moment she let her cruelty slip out where I could hear it. I, on the other hand, would spend my life actually living, actually moving forward. Holding on to anger would only hurt me. So I let it go. Not for her, but for me. Because I deserved peace. 6 months after I walked out of that house with the cake still sitting on the counter, I was sitting in my apartment on a Friday evening. It was snowing lightly outside, the flakes drifting past my window in the glow of the streetlights. I had a cup of coffee in my hand, and I was just watching the city, feeling a calm I had not felt in a long time. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. "Hi, Freeman. This is Sarah. Marcus gave me your number. He said you might want to grab coffee sometime." I stared at the message for a moment. Sarah. Marcus had mentioned her a few weeks ago, a friend of his girlfriend, someone he thought I might get along with. A year ago, I would have driven through a blizzard for someone who did not deserve it. Now I would not even cross the street for someone who did not respect me. But Sarah, maybe she was different. Maybe she was worth finding out. I typed back, "Coffee sounds good." "How about Saturday?" I hit send and set the phone down. I looked back out the window at the falling snow. It reminded me of that day driving through the storm, thinking I was heading toward love. But I had learned something important since then. Love is not about grand gestures or 9-hour drives through snowstorms. It is about two people who show up for each other, not because they have to, but because they want to. It is about respect, honesty, and choosing each other every single day. And this time I was only showing up for someone who showed up for me. That was not giving up on love. That was finally understanding what it really means. I had driven through hell for someone who wished I would crash. But I survived. I came out the other side stronger, wiser, and finally free. Free to build a life that was mine, free to find someone who valued me the way I deserved. And you know what? That was worth more than any marriage built on convenience and lies. So let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed too long in something that was already broken? Have you ever given everything to someone who gave nothing back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more real stories about life and love, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the bravest thing you can do. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, you are worth more than someone's convenience. You deserve someone who drives through the storm for you, not someone who hopes you crash in it.